or that concerns the users. Now, when systems are communicating, they are using certain means to communicate. The link or the communication between them needs to be confidential. There's need for integrity, which means accuracy of information passing in between them. Then there's need for availability. Once we are not able to reach the other device, then there's no availability. If you remember, then when we conducted a scan for open source, a list of ports were saying closed, closed, closed. If you remember, it means those ports were not available. Non-availability in cybersecurity has two approach or two ways of looking at it. If you have access, if you are authorized to access certain things and you cannot access it, that is when you say not available. But that is when you're talking about availability. But when you are not authorized to access something, then you are not expected to have access to something. So that the data should not be available to you if you are not authorized to view it. Sure, you understand? So in that case, what we were dealing with that day was that the owner of the data or the owner of the asset of the system says these ports are not available for public. So if you now force it to be available, that means you are breaking on availability. That means availability is in question. That means somebody that is not authorized can access data or services that are going on through that port. Are you following?
Yes, sir.
So what we are looking at is what makes it possible for two systems to be able to communicate. That's what network fundamentals is going to talk about. So when you understand the fundamentals of two devices communicating with each other, you'll be able to troubleshoot, you'll be able to analyze, and evaluate communication link in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of the security of those devices. And that's what's going to lead me to what we're going to talk about. And also Linux fundamentals. Okay. Linux fundamentals, basically, we're going to be looking at the most of the things we were talking about last week, where we are looking at why, how the Linux operating system is set up. If you remember, I was talking about some files, some directory, some hierarchy, hierarchical system in which Linux is arranged. Yes, you need to understand it because most of the time, as an analytic person, most of the time, even in cybersecurity, you'll be dealing within a Linux environment or Linux adaptations. Most terminals, they emulate Linux page, which is an environment, a terminal environment where you'll be running bash scripts or bash commands. So if you understand Linux fundamentals, you'll be able to effectively manage most servers, most systems within the IT space or within the network support space. Now that's why we're looking at Linux. And if you look at Linux there, you remember, okay, let me just run briefly through Linux file system. The file system, but we are going to look at the file system. We're going to look at the key directives. We're going to look at the basic system commands and the use cases. And before I forget, I'm actually supposed to have sent you a video link before this class, but it just skipped my mind. The network fundamentals I'm talking about, I did a video earlier on explaining what happens when you sit down behind your computer and you send a message to another computer elsewhere, which is the network, how system data move from your computer to another computer. The steps, the things that are involved, the layers of communication that exist, which explains network fundamentals. So we can see that we run through it today. So that means at some point I may have to play that video for you to watch. Okay, so let's look at this one. I'm not going to, because I know you have some fundamental understanding in this Linux. judging by what we did last week, I'm just going to run through it and touch on it briefly, just for a refresher purpose. If I'm correct, you have some fundamental knowledge of Linux from what we did last week. Am I correct?
Yes, I can still recall some basic commands
Awesome.
on.
Awesome. That's good. So, what is the Linux file system? So, this is the structure that organizes this and stores data on the Linux operating system. Just like we have in Windows system, there's a way files and data on Windows is being stored, and it's being organized into files and folders. That is what we're talking about, the structure. The same thing in Linux operating system. You have a structure within which these files are organized and stored. And this structure is very important or crucial for managing the Linux system effectively. Excuse me. It's crucial for managing the Linux system effectively, which means in order for you to understand the use of data, so it's important for you to understand, it helps you to understand how data is saved, data is being manipulated, data is being shared, you know, on Linux, you know. So it is crucial for managing Linux system effectively. That is understanding this Linux file system. Now, there are key directories, just like I said, in Windows we have folders. We have some key folders in Windows too. We have some folders. If you have ever explored your Windows, you see we have program folder, Windows, system directory. We have a lot of directories there too. But and then because in Windows, Windows has a what we call a graphical user interface. Windows is more user friendly than Linux. Windows has been arranged in such a way that the things you don't need to see, you don't see it. They use what we call abstraction. That is, if you launch a Windows system now, it will open a desktop. And on the desktop, you see icons, you see images that can drag and click and all those stuff. You don't have that in Linux. At least the part of Linux that you'll be dealing with don't have that. You can also interact with Linux through the GUI, but for this purpose, for purpose of IT, support and troubleshooting and security stuff that we're dealing with, you're going to be interfacing with the terminal, and through this terminal, that is where you communicate with all those directories. Now, Linux file system key directories. So there are basic directories. There are some directories that are very key. When I mean very key, these are the directories that are essential for things to work well within the Linux file system. The first one is the root directory. So this is the starting point. This is like what would I call it? The directory with the highest privilege, or let me say, more like the directory that contains every other thing. It contains all other directories are found in the root. And then the root user, if you are the person that is referred to as the root user on Linux, that means you have full access to modify the content. So more like the admin. In Windows, if you log in as admin, if you set up a window by default, you that set it up will be the admin, which means the person that set it up, you will have all the total control of all other directories in the system. So the root directory is more like saying the admin, the admin user, whereby you can do every other thing. You have the highest privilege. You can, if you remember last week, we were trying to do something. If you wanted to do something, I was asking you for password when you were trying to remember the password. I've forgot to even ask you. Have you been able to remember the password of those systems we were trying to do last?
No, I'm not, but I called my tutors. He was trying to put me through because there's a way we hack into the Debian server and got
Yeah.
input here. He was trying to explain to me, but I've not got it yet.
Okay, maybe later if you have a chance, you can do the hack. I remember there's a way we used to you hack into Kali Linux, especially when you lose the password. may
Yeah.
try that one later. Anyway, but what I'm explaining is that the root directory is like the admin, then the root user, the admin, which is like the admin who now the system has access to modify every other thing. So you can install, you can copy, you can save, you can delete anything. You can check any folder, you can check any file. Of course, with the root, with the password that you attach to the root user. That is a root directory. So then we have the bin, which is referred to the binary executable. So this folder contains command binaries such as all the commands that you run on the Linux. If you run ls, move, copy, bin, cat, echo, all the essential commands, especially ls, which means list, ls simply means to if you list is the list services or list the folders or list the files. When you type ls, it will give you a list of all the things that you contain in that folder where you are in. Then you have the cp, which is copy, mv, move, rm, which is remove, to remove file. Cat is usually to print out what is inside the file. And then echo means also echo is like when you want to write something inside the file. So these commands, what makes this command work? They are all stored in the binary executable folder. And this command is available for all users. These commands, every user every person that logs in that has an account on the Linux system can run this command. So if you run ls, for example, it will list all the contents of the directory. Now, the third folder is sbin, which is the system binaries. Remember, the other one is binaries. This one is system binaries. So this one's like administrative commands where you tell things like config, fdisk, which means to format disk and shut down. So these are system administration commands. And these commands, if you look at it, these commands are a bit, they require some higher privileges. A normal user will not do config. Anybody that is, normal person using the system will not want to do config. You don't want to format the disk. These commands are reserved for administrators. So these commands are stored in system binary. One of the reasons why we are talking about these things is so that in the course of you using your Linux, you might want to install an application. You might want to install maybe a tool, and you need to understand where this tool is going to save the files that you use to run. So that's one of the reasons why you need to understand what these folders are for. Then we have the boot folder, which is called the bootloader files. So this directory, the boot directory, contains the files that are necessary for your system to come up, or a Linux system to come up. So if you launch your Kali Linux, for example, if you launch your Kali Linux, for example, these files are you don't need to do anything before it comes up. I mean, once you just press the power button, it will come up. These files automatically they come up with power. Once you press the power button, they are the ones that make the system come up, and then for you before you are not able to type in your password and begin to do other things. So you put loader file. Then we have the dev/dev, which are device files. So they hold special types of files. They represent hardware components like hard drives, USB. Like partition. Like in the Windows. If you are familiar with Windows, which I know you are familiar with, you see like if you launch your computer, my computer inside your laptop, if you click on my computer, you will see C, D, USB, what other drive do you normally see there? All those drives that you see, you understand, those are the dev files. So they are stored in the dev folder. Remember, in Linux, we are calling it directory. They are stored in the dev directory. So, example, this /dev/n is a file that discards all data that are written into it. So inside this div, for instance, is a virtual file or virtual device where you can store things inside it. So when you store, it's more like saying the recycle bin. You understand? Because if you put anything into the door file, it will discard it. It will stay there as a virtual file, you know. But because for the sake of you will wondering like if something is wants to be if you want to delete something, why can't you just delete it directly instead of putting it in slash dev node? Or in configuration, we realize sometimes when you are writing a program, when you are writing a code, you need to specify where data will go to. Instead of typing delete, if you are writing a program now, you will not just write the program to delete. You send the file, you can echo the file into slash dev slash null. So when you echo there, it means that it will write the file and then the file will be discarded. So anyway, slash /dev files are files that are representing hardware components of Linux. Then this one here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, so we have a /etc. /etc. Sorry for the way the thing is showing. It's supposed to be of the same size. /etc. etc contains configuration files. So, for example, if you install an application or you set up a software, something working in your computer, the configuration files, like the files that make your applications, that determines how your application works. Your configuration is usually talking about how things work. So the configurations, they are usually saved in /etc. So if you are troubleshooting a file or you are trying to check for where maybe an hacker hacked into the system and you are scanning, you are analyzing the file to find where the hacker stored the script or is hiding the script that is causing virus, maybe installed virus on your system, and you want to know where the configuration that the virus is using to scatter your system where they have. So this is an example of a place where you can go to. So configuration file are stored in /etc. So example is /etc/password. User accounts, all the user accounts in the system. So if you create like 10 users, now, the user ID, the details of the user, like their login and their password, the hash of those things are usually stored in /etc/password /fs tab, file mounted file systems, /ssh, SSH config, this will contain the server settings for your SSH, SSH server, the settings. Basically, /etc, when you say etc, that is where configuration files are stored. So if you are trying to troubleshoot a tool and you want to see where the configuration are, or maybe you are setting up a SIEM system, maybe a Splunk server now, you're trying to set up a Splunk, or you are trying to set up a firewall, and then you are wondering how do you connect your ELK stack to this, and then you are looking for the configuration. Just go to the etc. If you remember last week, can you remember at some point we were checking inside we were looking for something inside the VAR folder?
Yes, I can remember.
Exactly. So this case, it was because then we were looking for, at that time we were looking for logs. That's why we are looking inside VAR. If we were looking for configuration, we would have been looking inside this /etc. So then we have the home directory. So for every user that logs into the Linux system, once you log in as a user, every user has their own set of home. Like just like in a Windows, if you log into a Windows, if for example, if you create in your laptop now, you create like 3 different accounts. You create an account for Lincoln, you create an account for Derek, you create an account for yourself. If you log into each of those accounts will have their own desktop, they will have their own my computer, they will have their own home. Same way. So home here is each user's personal directory. So every user on the Linux has a home directory. Is inside this home directory you see all the other directories that are relevant to that particular user. So each user gets a personal directory, which is /home/username. So if you log into your Kali Linux as Kali, it will be /home/Kali. That is not the same thing as root. Yes, you understand. Root is the admin. Home is like the desktop, like the home page, of that particular user. So every directory, personal directory pertaining to this user is stored there. Now, if you're a user, let's say you created a user called Charles on your laptop, so your Linux, you have /home/Charles. Are you following me? Are you following? Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, I can't hear you. You are muted. If you are saying something, you are muted.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. I was saying hello. When did
Okay, I
you?
lost you for a while.
I didn't know. I was just talking until I just said, let me say hello. And I realized that you're not
When you
responding.
talk, I was still with you when you talk about this home, the user home directories. My network just went off and got back on.
Okay, fine.
And it was not for long, just few seconds.
Okay. Okay, so the next one is the library directories. And we have lib and lib64. Uh, these are shared libraries. You know, this place also, they're storing system. Um, this one stores the files or the system binaries, libraries that are required for binary and the system binary file. Okay, so if you understand in programming or in computing, when you talk about library, you're talking about the collection of files. You understand? A library is talking about the collection of files that an application uses. It's talking about the collection of files that an application use, to run. You understand? So, for example, if you have um if you have a Linux, for instance, this Linux that we're talking about, it will need some files for it to properly function. In order for the system, for example, when you run a command like config this ifconfig, shutdown, all those applications that the system is using to work, it needs a set of files that will contain several functions or different functions and make the entire thing to work together. And if you want to explain it literally, if you want to understand, if you want to explain it as a layman, you know, if you're in what happens in a normal library that you go to, when you want to write a project or you want to conduct a research or you want to do something and you're looking for information on how to do it, or you are looking for books that contains information on how to do those things, you go to the library to read up to find out more information. Abi? The same thing here in the system. When an application wants to run and it needs to do one, two, three, four, five, six things, it will source for the information to carry out those things. So the libraries are like places, those files where that makes those applications to run, to work properly. You understand? So this library and library 64, they are required for system binaries. That's the system binaries files we talked about earlier on, the bin and the sbin. The libraries that make them work are stored in this library. So I'm sure you've experienced it. Maybe sometime when you are installing this tool, installing a software, it will get to a point and it will tell you some things, some files are missing. Have you experienced this before?
Yes, sir.
Mhm. So those are library files. So they are stored in the library directory. So we have the MNT, which is temporary mouse directory. Basically, it's a temporary folder. If you are installing something, you know, if you are installing, a lot of times these folders are for things that you don't want to be made, that the system does not want to keep permanently, or files that the system does not need to keep permanently. Sometimes things can stay in this temporary directory for a long time. It doesn't mean it will delete immediately, but usually those things that you don't use every time or they are used for a particular function, they are the ones that are kept in the temporary mouse directory. If you are installing, for instance, if you want to install an hard drive or you want to install a new system and that hard drive needs some files, needs to use some files during installation, it can keep those files in the temporary folder just for the period of installation. Once it's done installing, to delete them. So the temporary mount directory is a directory we mount, file systems for use. Then we have the opt. Opt is another very important for directory optional software. So when you run an app, it will be here it stores software packages, additional software packages and third-party applications. Now, when maybe you're installing a tool, or let me say tools that when you install your file, your system, there are some files and some applications that come, bundled with those systems that you're running. So such applications, sometimes they need extra application for them to work well. They need third-party work or third-party applications. So these third-party applications are what we refer to as optional software because it's like they help other applications to work properly. For example, if you install a tool now, let's assume you install I don't want to use Windows as an example. Let's assume, okay, Mmap now. Let's assume when you install Mmap now, Mmap needs to connect with some other application in order to run Mmap scripts. You can run Mmap without having the Mmap script. So the Mmap script, for instance, can be working with some other software packages, or applications that can make those Mmap to function better, to carry out some extra functions. The Mmap itself will work on its own, or it will work on its own. But sometimes it needs some third-party application in order to be able to connect to some other softwares to perform it. So optional software are basically software packages, third-party applications that helps the main application to work. And such type of application are stored in the OPT directory. Excuse me. A good example is like Google Chrome, for instance. Now, excuse me. Example like Google Chrome. Google Chrome, Google Chrome is a browser, but it's a software that you use to, is the software is not native to your laptop. Your laptop can work without a Google Chrome. Do you understand? Your Windows can work without Google Chrome. Your Linux can work without the Google Chrome. So this Google Chrome itself is the third-party application. It's not a native application to Linux. So here, when we say software and third-party application, these are applications that are not native to the Linux. Example of applications that are not, that are not optional or that are not third-party is in Windows, for example, if you launch Windows, you need a Windows Explorer. Windows Explorer normally comes with the system. Do you understand? Without Windows Explorer, you may not be able to do a lot of things on your, except you want to use a terminal, maybe command prompt. Do you understand? So Windows Explorer is a native application, but you cannot have some other applications that can still display the files, that you can use to check files and check other things in your system. Those ones are optional. They didn't follow the application to go. Do you understand? Do you get the optional software?
Yes, I got it.
Yeah. So any software that doesn't come naturally with your operating system is an optional. It's an optional software.
Just like
Then we
the Or maybe you install that program on it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So those software, they are stored in they start in slash opt. Then you have the process information. It's another important directory. It's all the processes that are running. They call them runtime. Runtime system information. Everything that is making when you launch an application is running. The process that is going on, all the processes that are working. They are stored in the process information. So, for example, here now you can see that CPU info will give you details of the system CPU. Then we have the slash run. They store runtime data for system processes. So this one stores data. Slash PRC stores the process information. This one stores the data. So for example, if you run /run/UTMB, keeps track of login users. So it's runtime data, the data of that is running. Then we have this SRV, which is service data, which is for hosting, used for hosting data served by system, such as web server files. So if you are launching a web server in your system, for instance, so data for those servers will stay in SRV. So this one it happens. Most of the time you use Linux. If you are if when you will soon get to all these things. Yeah. When you are running an application and you need to, for example, there's in okay, I think we did something like that last time too. When we set up okay, we applied it in a different way. You remember when we wanted to open a port, when we wanted to make sure that the system can receive a ping from the Metasploit table, and we had to open one of the ports. Do you remember that part?
Yes. Yes.
So usually, if what happens that if I want to hack a system, I want to create a communication between the system. One of the things you do is that you can set up a what do you call it, a web server on your system. For instance, now, as I'm talking to you, I'm communicating with your system. I want to what do you call it? Let's say that I want to run a phishing campaign now. I want to steal your information. I can set up a server on my system that I will not send you I can send you a file, exploit, a file, so that when you click the file on your system, it will connect with the server. So the file will be running on your system, but the server, the data that the file is using to exploit, all the activities that the file that is running on your system is carrying out, is hosted on my own laptop here. So if you get it, so an application is running on your own system, but the data that the application is using to run is residing on my own system. Do you understand? Hello? You get me?
Yes, sir. But I didn't get.
You didn't get what?
I'm trying to get it clear. I'm trying to get the explanation where I didn't really understand
Okay.
this
Okay, let me
service that.
explain. Okay, so service data is talking about the data that a service is using to run. Now, on the system, we have different services running. Now, I can run a web service on, I can spin up a web server on my laptop now. What the web server does is that it means, like, for example, let's assume in layman, I can say that I created a website on my system. And then, if there's a website, every website has a web server. You know that, Abi?
Yes, sir.
Every website, there's a server that is having the information that the website is. So if you go to google.com, all the information you are seeing on google.com is staying in somebody's server. So that server directory is like that web server that that is hosting google.com's files somewhere. So in this case, we are saying like any service that is running, services hosting data, like especially like a web server that you run that you're using hacking, you know, it is inside this SRV directory that you save it. And let me explain. One way it works is like if I want your system to be communicating with me, whether you know it or not, like if I log into your system now, that's one thing that happens a lot in hacking. You as you are using your system now, you don't know that they will say, somebody might have logged into your system, somebody might be stealing your information, you're stealing your data. I'm sure you've had that before now.
Yes, I've heard it a lot.
Yes, that you put on your system, you don't know that somebody has connected to your system and they are stealing data. It happens in mobile phone. They will tell you, so they are stealing your information, they are stealing your name, your data. So what happens is that somebody set up a web server or a kind of server on their computer and they send a file to you. So when you click the file, immediately you click the file, you run the file your system will automatically connect their own to the hacker's laptop or computer, whatever it's using. Do you understand? So what the data that makes that application work, the data that is making him to be able to sit on his own computer and be listening to what you are doing on your system, is because he set up a server on the system. So that server is all those kind of hosting data, those server, all the things that are the web files, all the stuff that makes it work is usually stored in this /srv directory.
Okay, sir.
Do you understand
Yeah.
now?
Sir, but all this file system, it's not all of them that we need to know, but maybe with time, when we're using it, we'll understand them better.
Even if I try to explain it to tomorrow, you may not get some of them because until you start using it.
Okay.
But why I'm saying it is that no matter what, you may not capture everything I'm saying, but you know that you've had this thing before.
Yeah.
Some of them you only understand them when you start using it.
Okay, sir.
Understand?
Yeah.
So while I'm running through it, which I'm almost the one I'm just running through it, is for you to have an idea of it because I'm going to be making reference to it. And we are going to have this, and as you work, we are going to be seeing the importance of this one.
Okay.
So the same thing with the SYS, which is system network interface, all the details of your network interface. In fact, one of the reasons why I'm explaining it, I'm taking time because we'll be checking these files, this folder directly as soon as we launch Linux, our Kali Linux, because we always want to check one or two things. That is normal with this work. Once you're on your Kali Linux, you'll be checking these things regularly.
Okay,
And
sir.
then TMP files are temporary files that if you restart your system, they will delete.
Okay.
Understand? Then USR is not user, sorry. USR, this one is a common mistake people make. They call this USR user. These are user utilities on application. So they contain all manner of binaries that the user, for example, if you logged in as a user and you're using your system, most of the things that you're doing will be stored in the user, in the user folder. Like Python, we are running a Python application, all those stuff. So then the R, which is variable data. This is usually for logs. This is another very important directory you need to know. Log files are stored here. Okay, I think that is it. So basic file system commands. I've gone through this. I don't think I need to go through this again now.
I
Have you?
understand it.
Okay. Same thing with this system command.
Okay.
Then use cases. managing user files, partition. So the next thing I want to do is the networking fundamental side. Okay, so I'm just going to explain it briefly before we watch the video. I'll share the video, I'll play the video, you watch it. I'll be here too so that we can review the video. So, like I was explaining earlier on at the beginning, network ports. In networking, we have ports and protocols. Okay, why do we have ports and protocols in network? Please follow this my line of thought very well, because this is very fundamental. Most people that write certified in cybersecurity exam, and even most fundamental cybersecurity certifications that you will write, a lot of people have problem with network security because it seems it's a technical part, but it's a basic technical part that they expect you to know, whichever area of cybersecurity you're going into. Have you written your own certified in cybersecurity?
The IS square, yes, I've written it.
You passed it now?
No.
Oh, okay. Did you remember this part of network security?
Network ports and virtual.
Network security, as in network security generally. This is the fundamental. Basically, you may not remember what your past is, but I wanted to ask. I want to know: do you know if the part of you passed the network security domain?
No, I think I passed the security principle and I think security incidents and response. I think there's no. I think I not pass the network. The network else.
Okay, so I want to explain it because a lot of it looks technical, but at the same time, it's not technical. It's easy to understand. So, introduction to network. In network ports, in networking, like I explained when I started this class, we were talking about networking, like when two devices are communicating with each other, certain things are happening. You know, two devices, for me to be able to communicate with you, that means there's something connecting us together, and there's something I'm listening to you through certain things. In this case now, it's my computer that is providing the output for me. It's through my earpiece I'm listening to you. You too, you are listening to your speaker is talking to you. Meanwhile, your earpiece, your mouthpiece is receiving your voice. Do you understand? The same thing here. My speaker I'm listening through the speaker, and my mouthpiece, my laptop mouthpiece is what is capturing. The same thing with ports. In network too, in networking generally, for two devices to communicate with each other, they always have a way, something that makes at the two ends of the communication. There's something at the two ends of communication that makes the message get delivered. So network ports are like endpoints used to identify specific processes or services. So, like I said, I'm talking through the mouthpiece. I'm sure sometimes you use the mobile phone. I know sometimes you pick a call, the person will be hearing you, but you will not be hearing the person. That means somebody's mouthpiece is working and somebody's mouthpiece is not working. Or your mouthpiece can be working and the speaker may not be working. The mouthpiece is the port, for speaking, for capturing your own voice. Meanwhile, the speaker is the outlet. The same thing on the other side. So ports, are virtual endpoints that identify specific processes on the device. So for every kind of communication going on between your device and another device, each process or service on your computer is communicating through a particular port. A good example now, if you are browsing now, browsing on your laptop, you open Google, you open let me even leave it at Google. You open Google, you're using Google. You are using Chrome browser. Let me use that word. You are using Chrome browser. On the same system that you're using Chrome browser, you know that your what they call it, your browser is connected. On the same, you might have an application like Telegram. You use Telegram on your laptop, Nabi. If you install the Telegram app,
Yes, I use it.
the Telegram app too is working at the same time. Your browser is communicating, at the same time your Telegram app is communicating. Let's assume you have a Skype for that you use for you use
Video call.
Skype for voice call, video call. That one too is running. You know that three different applications are running at the same time.
Yes.
So what happens that each of those applications, for them to be able to successfully communicate, each of them must have their own ports through which they are communicating. So the ports, a port is dedicated to browse to the Chrome, your Google Chrome. A port is dedicated to your Skype for the video call. A port is dedicated to the Telegram for the SMS, for the text message that is communicating. So and so on and so on like that for all the applications running on your system. Each of them has their different ports through which they are communicate, but they all work together, with what we call the IP address. This IP address makes it easy for the two systems to see each other. Then once they see each other, they share the messages via different ports. So so basically that is what network ports. Network ports are endpoints to identify each process. So when we're talking about process, browser is a process that is running. The Telegram app is a process that is running. The Skype app is a different process that is running. So many processes can be running on the system at the same time. Each of them will be operating. If they are communicating to another through your system, each of them will have their own ports with which they are communicating. Then this leads us to IP address. So for a system on a network now, I'm sure you have an idea of, do you have an, you know what an IP address is now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there are different kinds of IP address is basically identifying your device on the network.
Yeah.
When your device is identified, for each of those, all those services that are running on your system, they are all using the same IP address to communicate, but they are using different ports.
Port.
That is so. This thing is very important because in cybersecurity, that is what people do. You remember I said last week we were looking at ports, which ports were open.
Yes.
Each of those ports have their own characteristics depending on how they are configured. And the services that each of those services or applications that are running on each port, they have their own characteristics. And because they have their own characteristics, they have their own vulnerabilities too. For example, your Skype app, your Skype on your laptop can be outdated. Meanwhile, your Telegram may not be outdated, it may be updated correctly, it may be working fine. So an hacker can, because they are working on different ports, your Skype app that is outdated may now be vulnerable to hack. It may be causing the port that is assigned to that Skype app to be opened when it's not supposed to be open. And because of that vulnerability, somebody can access that app, that port, and get hold of your system, and hackers can take. So these are the things that you are checking. So that is why it's important for you to understand how ports and know what ports. So if you are configuring your system or you are setting up your system, you know that particular application is supposed to be running on this port. Why is it not running on the port? Those are things that things that should be of concern to you when it comes to how those network ports work. So we have IP address. IP address are in different ranges too. Sorry, I said IP address. These ports in a computer, you have about 65,535 ports. Means your computer can run up to 65,500 well known. Then we have registered ports. So these are assigned to specific applications. So in some cases, you have some applications that may not be common, but they are specific. They need to run on their own specific port for safety sake. So what it means is that those ports, no matter what, no matter which device you are connecting to, you must use those ports for those kind of applications. in order for you to be able to communicate easily. What if you are going to ask me why can't do you have any, if you have a sometimes people can ask a question like why can't you just use any port number for any service? As that question come to your mind?
Yes, I wanted to ask if you can even change the port number from like the HTTP. Can you change the HTTP from 80 to 143? Like, can you uh change it from the HTTP to the HTTPS? Like, you can switch port IP
The
on your
ports.
system. Yeah, the port.
Yes, you can do it. But why you will not your web port from 8080 to 1990?
Yeah,
The system will be communicating, will be trying to communicate to 8080, which is usually is the normal port.
port. Yeah.
But when it communicates, it won't get the response because you have configured your system to talk on a different port. The danger
Okay.
of it is that sometimes because you are communicating on a different port, someone can mistakenly send a different service to that your port 1990, thinking that the port 1990 is not being used. And the message
Yeah.
you send it can interfere with what you are doing and it will disrupt your communication.
Yeah, that's true.
You understand? So, and that is how, sometimes all these things hacking happens. So if for example, that day when we scan for open ports, if you discover that the ports are not assigned to the right places, you understand? It can simply mean that when we are communicating or when somebody is communicating, the person can use that one to disrupt service. Do you understand? Which doors did you leave open? Which windows are left open? It's the same thing. If all the windows are locked and the doors are closed, then the thief will now know that okay, for me to end, I have to break the window or break the door. And once you are breaking the door, you are going to trigger an alarm.
Yes.
So for a thief to break into a door, that means the thief must be very strong. Yes, it can happen in system too. Yes, a port that is closed, you can find a way around it, maybe force it to open or do something to it and then open. But by the time you'll be doing that, the system, antivirus, everything will know that something is going on. But most times, when you want to conduct a penetration test, you want to come in quietly, come into the system and then exploit the system. So that is the reason why all these ports are assigned. So we have well-known ports. And then when you're conducting your penetration test, you simply files between a client and the server. So if you are configuring your system and then you want to configure your file to send a message to maybe you want to set up your what do you call it now? SSH. You want to send it, you want to test. Okay, remember last week when we were doing the M map, we were scanning some ports. So maybe you want to scan a port you want to scan the file transfer, to scan the port whether it's allowing file transfer to happen. So instead of scanning all the ports like we did last week, you can just put mmap -p to entire shack. If you see any ports, if you use Wireshark to scan and you see the messages going there, you will see that you can see maybe it's the password the person is sending, or if it's a letter, a message person is transmitting through FTP. If you capture it, you will see clearly what they have typed there. Another vulnerability is brute force. You know what brute force means? It means that you can bombard it with several traffic
Awesome.
until it opens. Then anonymous logging, means that anonymous logging
Those are set of rules that they're supposed to obey.
exactly. So those port it means that port 20 and 21 you reserve it for 5 protocol. So it means the rules, the coding, and when we are talking about rules, we are talking about computer rules that guide file transfer.
Yeah.
So you run them on port 20 and 21. Port 22 is secure shell. So usually when you are doing remote logging, also for remote transfer, use SSH. And then vulnerabilities that weak password. It means that okay, like what? It means that okay, like I keep going back to when you run a scan. When you scan the system and you see that port 22 is open, it means that you can send a secure, you can use SSH to connect with that system, or you can send a file into that system that is open, that has open SSH. The same thing with for port 20 and 21. If you see that port 20 and port 21 is open on any system, it means that you can upload something, you can transfer a file into that port, you know, without even the person knowing,
No.
because the port is open. And it's like you said, they left the door open.
Yeah.
You understand? So somebody will just, like a house that is, you left your windows open. Somebody will just peep and drop something. I don't know if you've heard the story of those houses when they will open window and somebody will use comb and a stick to be
Yes.
picking phones still. It's because the
Yes.
windows are open. You understand? So the same thing in system. When you leave your port open, anybody can, you walking past can drop something, or either drop something or pick something. Then port 22 again. So if you misconfigure it, attacker is, they use it for privilege escalation. Privilege escalation means that, you remember when I said you have different users on your different logins on the Linux. So somebody can log in as ordinary user, maybe as Kali.
Yeah.
You said
As a normal user.
yes, and then after coming into your system as a normal user, you will run a script, and the script will automatically escalate the privilege. That means instead of being a normal user, the person will now become an admin user. And you know the danger of being an admin user. It means that once person is an admin or a
And
root
doing
user on your system, can delete anything, can copy anything, can reconfigure the system. That's how ransomware happens. Those ransomware that they will encrypt the system, be asking for money. Because most of the time they come in as an ordinary user, they will run a script, they become an admin or a root user, and then they will encrypt. Because as an ordinary user, you cannot encrypt the files. You understand?
yes.
So mitigation, you use SSH keys and 2FA, use all these things to secure the authentication. Then you have port telnet, port 23. So the ports I'm mentioning, I think it's just only the top 10. So, I put the range of 1,000. Then the top 10, they are usually top 10 ports. That's the top 10 most common ports that people use. Port 23 is another one, telnet. This is for remote communication. It's similar to SSH, but is insecure. Like we were talking about SSH here, you can make SSH to be secure. You can configure SSH port to have keys. Telnet is open, is porous, it's insecure. You can easily send messages communicating over port 23 are plain text. So if you capture any signal going through the port 23, it's usually going to be a plain message and you can read it. The man in the middle attack easily can exploit unencrypted traffic. So if somebody intercepts the communication between your device or the communication going on between two devices via port 23, once you intercept that message, you can read what is it because it is not encrypted. Then you disable telnet and use SSH. So what you're saying when you say disable, you're saying you close the ports, lock the ports, make sure the port is not active. Or 25
So
SMTP
the
for
tenant is unsecured or SSH.
yes, similar,
Okay.
secured, unsecured.
Okay.
SSH,
This
but it's not
SSH is the
secured.
secured. Okay.
SSH is a secured version of port 23.
Okay. That's what
So
22.
23. Port
No,
22 is
22
SSH.
yeah. 22
Yes.
is SSH, 23 is telnet, yeah.
Telnet, yes. And you have 25, SMTP. So for email communication between servers, so when you have set up Outlook on your laptop, Outlook, all those different mail applications, usually they use port 25, you know, which is email transmission between mail servers. So when you have an email server on your phone, but this SMTP2 is open, it's not very secured, especially if it's is it can be spammed easily, and it can phishing can happen through email spoofing. So if you implement it with SMTP authentication, you can have the authentication, SMTP authentication, SPF, DKM, all these email protocols that they use to secure it. You know, they can make the thoughts secured. So that's why SPF, DKM, and I've forgotten the full meaning now. But these are the things that makes people, when they send email to you, some email will enter the spam box. You know, some email will enter. You will not see some email. Google will just automatically banks so email. It's because of this SPF, DKM, DMARC setting. These are security settings that is set. When you set in this security, if your email does not meet these conditions, it will not come into your inbox.
Okay.
Do you understand? If the email the person is sending does not meet this condition, it will not come into the inbox. So that's how to secure port 25. Then port 53 is domain name service. You understand the concept of domain name system, Abi?
Yes.
So every IP address or every domain name has an IP address behind it. So the
Yes.
DNS server is what resolves the domain name. And then the port 53 is used for communication, domain name communication. So if on my browser now I type google.com and my browser want to resolve that domain name to IP address, it will send a message to the DNS server, to the nearest DNS server, and it will now communicate that message through port 53. So if you take a Wireshark and you capture the traffic going on, if you search for DNS, you see all the list of DNS servers, and then you know that it's port 53 that is used to communicate. So the vulnerability of port 53 DNS is DNS can be spoofed or poisoned. That is, you can change the DNS address that the system is communicating and redirect it to a malicious site. Then also denial of service DDoS can be conducted via this DNS. Denial of service is like you can run traffic, that
From
will you can
different server.
run traffic to it exactly that will prevent other people from being able to use that service. Then the mitigation is to enable DNS security, DNS secured, which is unconfigured rate limit. So this DNS security is like the encrypted is the secured version of the DNS. Then rate limiting is really talking about the rate of, one of the things that happens is like the rate at which the system is trying to access the DNS server can be limited. If you can limit your system to a particular type of DNS service. Those are what we're talking about configuring rate limit. So that's a way of mitigating it. Port 80, HTTP, like we said earlier on, which means it means basically hypertext transfer protocol for web bridge pages between servers and browsers. And then this one is susceptible to man-in-the-middle attack because HTTP is not encrypted. So all the communications over HTTP, they are in plain text. It means if somebody steals the data communication, person will see everything you're typing through your browser, communicate. And then, because people do a lot of sales, payments, ATM card information are shared via website now. So this HTTP cannot be used. So you need to use HTTPS. You enforce HTTPS by installing SSL and TLS certificates. So HTTPS simply means the secured version of HTTP, and it simply means that if the communication is captured, is encrypted, the person cannot see the details of what you are communicating between the two servers. Then we have port 110, which is for POP, which is also for email. Is a way in which you communicate email. This one is more common nowadays. Means this port is used to retrieve email from a server to a client. So this is what if you understand the way post office work. Post office, email. If you after picking your email now, Abi,
Yeah.
you don't leave anything for the post office now. You carry all your letter, Abi.
Yes.
So that's the way the
Mailbox
protocol
will
that
be
is.
empty.
You say
So the mailbox will be empty.
exactly. So if you set up your email service to use POP, it means that once you download your emails from your server into your desktop, there's nothing else on the server. If tomorrow you come back and say, I'm looking for an email, Otilo, you can't see any email again because you have downloaded everything to your server. You know. So, and the vulnerability there is that it is also using clear text. So when you are communicating using POP3, I mean, phishing can easily happen here, and then information to is exposed. So to secure it, you can use SSL/TLS, which is encryption. So the message communication here can be encrypted too, so that even when it's stolen, they won't see it. Then IMAP is the opposite of IMAP, which is port 143, is the opposite of POP. So basically, one, like in post office, you say you collect your email, you carry your email, nothing is left on the server. Here, if you download a copy to your system and leave a copy on the server, that even if you lose your laptop or your Outlook desktop, if you set it up anywhere, you can still download the same message again. And that's what usually happens. When if you configure your email on your mobile phone. I don't know if you check emails on your mobile phone.
Yes, I do.
So you notice that if you check email on your mobile phone and you still log in on your laptop or you log in on the different laptop, you still see all the same email everywhere because they use IMAP. You understand? So the email, when you don't configure this thing properly and you configure POP3 and the first person to open it, let's assume me and you were sharing is a company email, for example. Now, if I log into the email on my phone and I check it, if it's a POP, the email will be on my phone. If you use the same email address to log in on a different device and check the same email, you will not see anything in there. I don't know if you've experienced that one before. People, if you work in an environment, in a corporate environment where they share all these emails, you see some people say, I saw this email some days ago on my laptop, but when I use my phone to check it, I'm not seeing the email again. But when you go to your laptop, you see the email. The email has left the server. So to prevent such things, we use this protocol, IMAP protocol. IMAP protocol allows you to keep the copy on the server while you still have copies on your system.
Okay.
And then this one, the vulnerabilities that brute force attack can happen. So because you can check from several sides, so brute force, people can try to simulate, to try. It's like brute force means they can be trying different, access, different ways of accessing it, trying different password until they get the right one, which is what brute force attack happens. Means they are trying to force something to open. And if it's not encrypted, data too can be exposed. So IMAP 2 has IMAPs, which is you can encrypt IMAPs. IMAP secured, which means even when the break into your IMAP, it is secured. We have port 443 for the secured version of HTTP. The vulnerability is you can easily misconfigure HTTPS, and then you have issues. Then we have 3389, which is RDP, which is simply the remote desktop protocol. What does it do? So it helps you to have remote, access to your Windows machine. So if I'm here now, you can enable me to see what's going on in your system. I will be able to log in. I'll be here and I'll be controlling your mouse, checking your file. It's a remote desktop protocol that achieves that. And is also vulnerable to brute force and ransomware. I've had a lot of this. A lot of this do happen. These remote desk, I know because most of the time hackers are not in the same location where you are. They are trying to connect. So most times these days, because of remote working, these remote accessibility is usually enabled on many laptops because IT support may need to log into your system from a remote location and work on your system. So that makes a lot of company misconfigure that thing, and then IMAP secured, which means even when the break into your IMAP, it is secured. You have port 443 for the secured version of HTTP. The vulnerability is you can easily misconfigure HTTPS, and then you have issues. Then we have 3389, which is RDP, which is simply the remote desktop protocol. What does it do? So it helps you to have remote, access to your Windows machine. So if I'm here now, you can enable me to see what's going on in your system. I will be able to log in. I'll be here and I'll be controlling your mouse, checking your file. It's a remote desktop protocol that achieve that. Send is also vulnerable to brute force and ransomware. I've had a lot of this do happen. This remote desk, I know because most of the time hackers are not in the same location where you are. They are trying to connect. So most times these days, because of remote working, this remote accessibility is usually enabled on many laptops because IT support may need to log into your system from a remote location and work on your system. So that makes a lot of company misconfigure that thing, and then hackers take advantage of it. And also because it's a remote connection, it means that it's easy for somebody to intercept the communication because you are communicating over a long distance. So how do you communicate? You always make sure that you have network level authentication and use strong passwords, and then limit access via VPN. All these things can be used. So of course, I'll share this document with you. Best practices. But before we do best practice, let me quickly. Sorry, excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
Let me quickly see if I can play the video for you, or I'll just allow you to go and watch it. Yes. Okay, I think let me just round up with what I'm saying, and then I'll send you the link to the video so that you can watch. I think that will be better.
Yeah, I'll watch it later.
So best practices. Best practices, like we said, if you are not using any ports, use it. Like I remember, at home, then when we're going over, they will tell you close the door, but you leave the door open. When you enter your house, they will say lock the door. Yes, and basically,
Uh, intrusion detection system and
intrusion detection and intrusion prevention. So
prevention. Yeah.
yeah, so you use firewall. Firewall is firewall too now. Firewall, you configure the firewall that will not allow anything to come in through those ports. That's what you do with files. Even after the firewall, you now still use an IDS, which are okay, should in case so number one, first of all, you have closed the port, you have disabled the port. After you have disabled the port, despite the fact that you have disabled the port, you will still set firewalls. After
Okay.
firewall, so that in case, even if after disabling somebody comes in, the firewall will block the person. Behind the firewall, you will now put IDS again, so that if somebody breaks through your ports, breaks through the
Yeah.
firewall, at least the IDS should give you a signal that
Signal. Yeah, there's an
somebody
authorized.
exactly. Then enable encryption. So that even if somebody passes through all those things that I say, the encryption should be able to the person should not be able to see what is stored. They monitor logs. Logs will tell you that the importance of log. Log is what will tell you that
It
somebody tried
shows
to hack into the
keep
system.
track of all the
Exactly.
users.
Then you use strong authentication, which means enforce complex factor and multi-factor authentication. Then okay. I don't want to go into logging. Logging.
First, what we're talking about uh, the Linux file system, but I think when we're trying to use them, I think I'll understand
Okay,
them
so
better.
that part was a bit confusing, Abby.
You know, some of all those I know they are part of the file system that help the system that they help the computer to work properly the functionality for the computer to work effectively, but there are some of them that's confusing. But I think
No
maybe if
problem.
I watch the video again, and maybe you still need to send these slides to me so that I can
No,
still go through them.
no wahala. No
Okay.
wahala.
But when you were talking about the network ports, I was catching up. I was
Okay.
because I'm familiar with them.
No wahala. Okay, no problem. Let
Okay,
me let me quickly look for the video and share it.
okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Is it the YouTube page you asked me?
No, to this seeing the slide.
The same presentation. Okay, okay, sorry. Okay, sure. I said I will send the link to you to watch so that you don't
Yes.
watch it over this. Okay, okay. No worry. Let me just maybe. System. Okay, this is it. Should I put it on the WhatsApp or I should put it here?
Any of them. I have access to them. It's 19 minutes.
So you can wait, let me check something for you. Let's see if we can. So, I think hello?
I hear you.
I think you should watch everything. I wanted to say you should skip before, but I think you should watch everything. So part of it, of course, you might understand some part of it before, but you can skip through. But watch everything because
I watch everything.
it explains it. You know, every part of the video is it's lines
Okay.
up with what
Okay.
you get. Is every part of the video is fundamental. I think you should watch it now because the next class again will now be more practical. You know, last week practical we did, right? So the next class we're going to be doing now, we're going to go into more
Okay,
practical.
sir.
So watch it so that then at least you can it will help in the way you flow too.
Okay, sir. But Derek will join the next class.
Derek joined. We're even supposed to join the other guy from Australia today, but I don't know. Maybe he slept. You know, they are this time is around 3. It's around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. their time now. So
Okay.
that's right. But I'm sure. Good. Fantastic. Okay. Now you can still see my screen, I believe. So
Yes, sir.
we are talking about network and Linux fundamentals. And like I was trying to establish for you that network, when two systems are communicating, basically they form a network. When once you have more than one system or more than one device sharing resources, sharing devices, sharing whatever it is that they're sharing. Once you have